So guys, I've been informed I should keep it down on account of Esther shooting some kind of fail video in the room next to me. You should subscribe to her channel if you want to see her videos. It's NCIX Esther. So today I'm going to be unboxing the Palit GeForce GTX 580. Now this isn't like your dad's or your grandpa's GTX 580. This is a somewhat different GTX 580. First of all, it has a dual fan cooler. Second of all, it has a DisplayPort output. And third of all, it has 3 gigs, yes, 3 gigs of memory on a single GPU card. So it supports DirectX 11, 3D Vision Surround, PhysX, CUDA, SLI. It supports NVIDIA Surround without 3D Vision as well, but you'll need 2 cards for that. And this is actually one of the few situations where I would really recommend a card like this with 3 gigs of memory, and I'll get into that a little bit more why later. So here are some logos for all of that stuff that I mentioned before. It's compatible with Windows 7. It bloody well better be if it's DirectX 11 ready, supposedly. Okay, there's some kind of sticker there. There's the Palit frog. Okay, there's more branding. Some more branding, no more frogs. Yeah, we got another frog on the back. There's their frog guy. Yeah. Okay, what else we got? So, technical specifications. NVIDIA GeForce chipset, OpenGL, DirectX, okay. Built for DirectX 11, surround gaming. Yep, more on that later. Play in 3D. 3D is good. It is a PCI Express 2.0 16X card, which we will see when we open it up. And it requires a minimum 600 watt or greater power supply with at least 42 amps on the 12 volt rail. Remember, that's a combined 42 amps. If you have dual 12 volt rails and you have one that's like, 30 and another that's 30, that's still good enough to be 42 amps. All right, inside the box, we will find some stuff. Mostly we will find foam. No video cards, sorry, not today. I'm just kidding, there's a video card in here. Okay, so there's the GTX 580. But I'm just kidding. I'm going to show you guys the accessories first. So there is a dual 6-pin to 8-pin PCIe adapter. How exciting. That's it in there. Next we have a DVI to VGA adapter. If you're seriously still running a VGA monitor and a card like this. And yes, I stand by what I said. A lot of people are complaining about that particular comment, but I think it's true. I think if you're buying a $500 graphics card, you ought to upgrade your monitor if you're still actually running a VGA monitor. Here's a quick installation guide. Here's a driver disk. Don't use it. Download the latest from the NVIDIA website. And finally, here is the card itself. So we're going to pull this guy out. Ever so gently, ever so carefully. Ooh, and I think I'm already gonna like this card. Yes, I am already going to like this card because it has a matte black PCB. Awesome. I'm a big fan of the matte black PCB. It's a zero reflection, nothing, just matte black awesomeness. Everything looks good when it's in silver and matte black. So here's a standard GTX 580 PCB for contrast. See how shiny that is? See how shiny this is? Not at all. All right. So here is our standard PCI Express 16X connector. Here's our dual SLI fingers. So this card does support up to 2-way and 3-way and even 4-way SLI on supported motherboards, although 4-way SLI isn't a great value. I mean, neither is 3-way, but 4-way really isn't a great value. 3-way is probably about as high as I would go, even for an extreme gaming rig. Here on the back of the card, we find that non-standard output setup that I talked about. So we've got dual DVI, full-size HDMI, and DisplayPort. So we'll contrast that with the standard GTX 580, where we find dual DVI and mini HDMI. So that's a little bit different. We also do not have a full PCI bracket width for exhaust, and the reason for that is we are using a non-reference cooler. So right here we're using kind of a dual fan. These look like, oh, it's hard to say. I think they're probably 80 mils, but they might be 70 mils. I can't quite tell. They're low profile fans. This is still a dual slot card, so you don't need 3 slots for the card itself, although I would still recommend leaving the next slot over vacant so that these fans do have some room to breathe. Most of the exhaust, it looks like, due to the shape of the cooler, is being done out the back of the card here, where you can see it's just full of dense fins. That's a very dense aluminum fin cooler. There's your 2 fans plugged in, so this is a fully custom PCB, not just the color, but the entire PCB design, because it has actual fan inputs for both of these fans rather than just one. And then obviously here on the other side, so you can see the fins through there, but that one's not going to be able to exhaust as much. Should be okay. It's only a single GPU card, so it's not like we have to worry about 2 GPUs getting equal cooling or anything like that, so I would expect it to perform at least as well as the stock cooler. If not, it should actually be better. I mean, look at this. You got, how many fat heat pipes is that on there? It looks like you got about 4 heat pipes in there, carrying heat over here to the other side as well as over to the front of the card. Up here on the top, looks fairly standard. So like I said, you got your SLI fingers, you've also got a 4-pin and a 3-pin connector. So just because it has more memory doesn't mean that it needs more power. It uses the same amount of power as a standard GTX 580. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about this card, except why you would buy one. So a 3 gig GTX 580, what is it for? Well, it's for SLI running triple monitor HD plus resolution configurations, or if you play with like ridiculous high res texture packs in your favorite games, because the reality of it is 1.5 gigs is plenty of RAM for a GTX 580 unless you're running an extreme usage scenario. So remember, in SLI, doing, like, let's say you're doing NVIDIA Surround with 3 2560 by 1600 monitors, each card has to store all of the textures, has to use its own frame buffer to store all of the information necessary for that entire, like, 6 times HD resolution that you're talking about with a setup like that. I think what is it, something like 12 megapixels. So when you're in SLI, you don't actually get to double your frame buffer when you put 2 cards together. So you run 2 of these, you don't have 3 gigs of memory effectively. You actually only have 1.5 still. So if you run 2 of these or 3 of these, you only have 3 gigs of effective memory, no matter how many cards you're running together. So that is why if you're running a great big resolution, or if you're running mostly just big resolutions, something like this could be really handy, because it could be the difference. Like, you don't just get a linear performance increase from more memory. It would be the difference between it's playable at you know, like 40 FPS, or it runs at like 6 FPS because it's completely out of memory and it has to swap. So it has to swap to the drive. So there you go. Thank you for checking out my unboxing of the Palit GTX 580 3 gig. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other computer videos.